Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining this session this morning. This is the first in a number of mastering product data sessions that Claire and I are going to be running over the coming months. And today we're going to be focusing on the vertical that is industrial solutions and electrocomponents. So really happy to be on this morning with you, Claire.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Claire. I am co-founder and chief growth officer at Start With Data.
Awesome. So we're going to, talk about various topics around product data and particularly around industrial solutions. This is really an opportunity to learn a little bit more about, the role of product data within the processes that this industry faces and the kind of product data flow between manufacturers and distributors as well. So hopefully if you're listening to this session, you may be a manufacturer, you may be a distributor, you're hopefully selling the types of products that are in industrial solutions and electrocomponents, or you may just be someone that's got a very keen interest in the dynamics at play between manufacturers and distributors in this. We see a lot of challenges. We work with a lot of manufacturers and distributors in this space, and we see really the same challenges over and over again when it comes to product data. So, manufacturers ultimately make the products and they tend to distribute them to their customers, either through distributors or in some cases directly to their end customers. And a manufacturer's job is all about creating really good, accurate product content for all of those different distribution partner and trading partner needs, right? And we often see that a lot of this data is basically buried in their organizations, right? I mean, we always laugh about the fact that manufacturers make their products, right? So they must have the product data relating to those products. But we see a lot of the time that stuff is either deep in their ERP or probably on some PDF spec sheets that haven't been transposed digitally, right? So,
or even in Bob's head on the shop floor.
Bob's head, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, one of the big challenges is getting all of that information out of Bob's head and putting it in a tool that you can share with your trading partners. We also see most manufacturing business have some sort of like new market or regional global expansion plan, which requires multilingual content and the repurposing content, and they're also usually growing their channel, their trading partner base, right? They're always actively going out to find new distributors and trading partners to sell their products through. Then if we look on the distributor side, well, ultimately your job as the distributor is to, be effectively the middleman for the distribution of many suppliers' products, right, into probably a customer ecosystem of some probably very large customers that are looking to consolidate their spend and sourcing activities with you. So, the big problem for distributors is just acquiring all this content from suppliers, right? And that's an area we're going to talk a lot more about this morning. We see a lot of industrial suppliers' websites with missing data, and it's a bit crazy really considering the types of products that we tend to deal with in industrial and electrocomponents. Loads of attributes, very complex type product types where product data is super important for procurement purchasing decisions on the customer side. We also think things like compliance are really obviously important with some of the regulatory aspects that are coming in this industry. And ultimately, distributors can't scale, right? Distributors want to grow their range, right? That's what it's all about, consolidation and growth. How do you grow your range if you don't have product data processes and systems in place to do that? So we're going to talk a lot more about these topics this morning. And you're probably wondering, well, why start with data in a place to be able to talk about these things? Well, Start With Data as a business, we work with manufacturers and distributors in this space. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about 3 examples of that. So firstly, one of our customers is RS Group. So RS Group, most people know who they are. They're a huge distributor, global distributor, and we have been supporting them for a long time now on a big transformation through their process solution and data side of the transformation. And we are also actively supporting them with enrichment activities as well across some of their catalogue. And the big problem for RS is about volume of introduction, right? They introduce 25,000 products a month, so it's pretty substantial product data operation they've got going on. And then if we look at Varian Group, who are actually one of their suppliers, one of RS's suppliers, so we also work with Varian Group. So these guys manufacture pressure sensors, a really important component in a whole variety of different industries and product types. And their big challenge is all about getting the information out of their organisation in front of the distributors, right? Because a lot of this information isn't digitised today. So we've been working with Varian. And then lastly, if we go on the other side of the world from where we are today, we've got Pacific Automation. So they're a small distributor based in Perth in Western Australia. And again, they have kind of the same challenge that RS do, really, just on a kind of smaller scale. They're acquiring a lot of product data from their suppliers, and how do they improve the data quality and completeness of that data? Well, we've been supporting them on that journey as well. So 3 really good examples, a very common thread across all 3 that we're going to talk a bit more about in the coming slides. Over to you, Claire.
Great. So as Ben alluded to, that there is this playoff between suppliers and distributors, so manufacturers and distributors, and it's all about how there tends to be a massive bottleneck, basically, and that what this does is it affects any kind of expansion. It affects e-commerce growth. It affects sales enablement, so for the team actually out there selling the products. And then lastly, it also affects compliance. And so I think one of the things that when we were pulling all of this together, one of the things that really stood out was that actually out of all of these problems, bar one, they're exactly the same for manufacturers and distributors, depending on and that whatever side of the fence you sit on, you're facing the same problem, just from a different angle. So obviously, manufacturers inconsistent supplier data isn't an issue for them, but for distributors, that is one of the biggest bottlenecks that they have. I mean, if you talk about RS, I think it's something like 6,000 suppliers that they have.
Yeah,
right, Ben?
yeah.
Does that sound about right? Yeah. Yeah. And so, if you imagine trying to normalize all of this data from that vast amount of suppliers, it's a huge undertaking. Missing images, specs, and docs. We see in both distributors and manufacturers. So we see it from manufacturers that they have the data. So we were actually working with a client on the data and content side of things, that they had all of this data in multitudes of manuals and PDFs and all of that, but they couldn't actually extract all of that data into a digitized format to then be able to sell that product effectively, or to be able to distribute that data out to their partners, their trading partners. So that was from a manufacturer end. Obviously, from a distributor end, I know one of the challenges that Pacific Automation had was that I think they were able to range about 15% at the time before we started working in 15% of the SKUs on their website, because again, they didn't have images, spec docs, which is what people need to be able to buy products, right? I think manual data onboarding, the time efficiency of teams doing this, we'll show you some stats later on. It's a huge undertaking, and businesses lose a massive amount of times. Again, both sides of the fence. The time to market, we'll cover kind of what we often see in the market about how long an NPI takes. But I know with RS that they reduced something like back years ago when we first started working with them, it was taking them about 130 days to launch a product.
Yeah.
And I think it's now down to about 6 days, well, less than a week. So there's been huge transformation there. Compliance, the products that we're selling, it's not like just selling a red t-shirt. These are very complex products that are often going into, environments that are, it can be a real safety concern if we don't get that right, or if you don't have the documentation to prove it. ERPs, most businesses now have an ERP. ERPs are not built for product information, and so a lot of businesses tend to outgrow these very quickly, but they tend to try and make do for a long time, and it affects what they're actually able to get out of their product data. And then obviously lots of disconnected systems and websites, so there's no single source of the truth anywhere. So we see that from both sides of the industry. Okay. So this is what I was alluding to here. So we often see, I think there's an average, so within this industry, I think it's actually longer, but just generally in B2B, it's around 30 days it kind of would normally take to launch a product. And to be honest, that's that's basically what we see. And what we know is that this normally takes about 10 to 15 interactions. So by the time that you say, yep, okay, great, we're going to arrange that, there's then 10 to 15 interactions for each SKU with the supplier to kind of get all of that information. It then can take up to 2 to 5 hours per SKU to verify. So that's, if you think about the amount of SKUs in your business that you're trying to arrange, and think about the manpower that needs to be put behind this, it's a huge undertaking, which then means that you're delaying your time to market, which means that if your competitors have got this right, they're going to be launching that product first with product data, which means that they're going to be more discoverable. Their website's going to be more discoverable, the product's going to be more discoverable, so you're already way behind. So I think it's the time efficiency that is a massive bottleneck for the supplier and the distributor. For the supplier, there's a big cash problem there, that if you're not getting your product to market quick, you're not going to be selling them quick enough. And then obviously for the distributor, there will be top categories that, the more data that they have, the better they're going to sell, and the better that they're going to range those over your products if you're not giving the right data. So I think it's really important to think about that. If you're looking at so the delayed product launches, you're going to get better supplier collaboration. The incomplete listings on sales channels, those products will get decategorized on websites if they're not a complete.
We've seen a lot of
product.
examples of that, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah. The customer trust, I think, is another big one. Is that if a customer can't see your product, in e-commerce, you can't see, you can't touch, you can't feel it. So if you can't, give an image, give spec data, data sheets, compliance material, you're not going to stand out against the other suppliers that are doing that. This is just a little bit more detail into what we see out in the market. But as I said before, RS took, their NPI down, drastically reduced it. So it's possible, but you need to get the systems and the processes in place to be able to do Definitely.
That. Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Claire, as well. Like, the other thing that we're seeing a lot of is like the growth of the volume of data required, right? Because the whole thing is like a chicken egg thing, right? Like, you can sort out your data acquisition processes, or as a manufacturer you sort that data, but that's just growing. Like, the volume of spec attributes that's being required is growing. The language requirements is growing. The demand is just exponential. And the thing is, so it's like a runaway thing, right? Over time, unless you sort out these processes now, and you run large enrichment projects, you're just chasing your tail forever, right? and
Yeah.
you're going to get further and further behind. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's a bit like, I think we did a formula like that for, I can't remember which customer it was, but it was, if you have one SKU that goes to one channel, can you remember the formula that we did? And then you
yeah,
have,
yeah. It's like
10,
one SKU, one attribute, one SKU, 10 attributes.
yeah,
One SKU, 10 attributes, 10 languages. It's
yeah,
like an expert. All of a sudden, you've got 1,000 pieces of data required for one
one
SKU.
SKU. Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you like? Well, the answer is like automation and things, right? And you've got to
Absolutely.
look into ways of automating it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm not going to make this about DPP, but I think digital product passport is another thing to think about, that if I think it's 2026, they're starting the rollout, but 2027 is really when it becomes they're putting that out to more industries, and you will not be able to sell into
No.
Europe unless you have all of that product data, because there's a certain level of product data that you're going to need to be able to get that digital ID, and if you don't have it, you're just simply not going to be able to sell there. So yeah, that's just another factor that's going to happen, and the requirements, as you said, are getting more and
Yeah,
more for businesses.
definitely.
Great. So specific challenges for the manufacturer. So as we mentioned before, extracting data from legacy systems, PDFs and spreadsheets, often what we find, the data exists in manufacturers. It's there, but it's just often in complete data silos,
Mm.
or it's never been digitized. So that is, it's great that the data's there, but then you actually need to kind of operationalize that data. Build complete product records and data sheets. We're actually seeing a lot of manufacturers. I mean, data sheets have been around for a long time, but
Mm.
I think this is you don't now have a lot of sales team out in the field, with a big chunky catalog going through. So this is a way. The data sheets are a way, obviously, to showcase a product, but we're also seeing lots of manufacturers who want specific brand catalogs, or like a brand portal type of thing,
Yeah.
right, Ben? So that
Yeah.
customers can go on and view that product.
Yeah.
So this is something that, yeah, it just makes your product more sellable, right? Creating consistent content across categories and regions. So this is it's what we were just talking about, the scale of the problem, being able to do that at scale. I From off the top of my head, if you think about, say, somebody like Varian, I think they're in 9 different language
Yeah.
regions. So if you think about trying to translate a 9-page data sheet into 9 different languages for one SKU, even that is like
Yeah.
it's a massive undertaking. And then obviously the other challenge is being able to support distributors with the accurate product specs. So that's what we see a lot of the time. This information is there, but it's just buried. So it's about bringing that to the forefront and then kind of getting that in a digestible format that then they're able to send out to their distributing partners. Did you have anything to add on that one,
Yeah,
Ben?
I think just like the overarching thing I've always seen in these organizations, it's like you should be asking yourself a question as a manufacturer: how easy am I to do business with? Like, that's fundamentally what it's about, right? And that could go across very, very many operational aspects of your organization. But fundamentally, if you're easier to do business with, if you can give the right data at the right time to the right trading partners, there you're going to sell more and grow more. It's as simple as that. And there's just not. I just think there's not enough manufacturers that have realised that. Yeah, that this digital trading element of their operation is super important. It's super
Yep.
important, and that goes across. That's not just like for e-commerce, digital trading. It's also for like sales agents. It's like empowering your sales teams on the field to give them the data they need to go and sell the products that you're trying to sell and distribute. So how easy are we to do business with? And actually, it goes for the distributor as well. How easy are we to do business with?
It's true, yeah.
I think the difference for distributors we've found is, you know, distributors need to make it easy for suppliers to work with them, right? Because at the end of the day, the easier it is to work with you, the more chances you're gonna get more volume of products onboarded, and probably suppliers are going to pick you over another distribution partner. So that top thing about supplier data onboarding transformation, I mean, we think it's such an immature, underserviced part of the market. You know, we talk a lot about PIM on these sessions and in our business, but fundamentally, supplier data onboarding transformation is not about PIM. It's about workflows and approvals and vendor portals and all of those sorts of things, and data standards like, that we ETIM and all those sorts of things. So, really, if you don't have a work stream in your organization as a distributor focusing on this topic, supplier data onboarding, you're going to be chasing your tail, basically, is what we've seen.
Yeah.
And then the other thing for distributors is not just classic product data, master data that they acquire, right? There's a whole bunch of other stuff like operational data. Think about things like lead times or pricing or inventory, that are all things that are entities of data that require and some of them are quite high volume and change frequently, right? And so it's even that slows things down. And then compliance, everything that Claire said about supplier, the manufacturer applies to the distributor, right? Compliance is actually, you're often the ones showing the end customers the data, right? Not your suppliers. So you better make sure it's traceable and validated. And ultimately, a lot of this comes down to look at your sales channels. Is the data complete, right? Your job. I remember years ago when I used to work more in retail, we always used to talk about a retailer is just a shop window for a supplier's products, right? The same goes for a distributor. It's just a shop window. It's like how well do you want to showcase your range of millions of products, to your end customers? And so clean data is really, really important in that context, and lots of it, which obviously varies across different categories.
Yeah, I was also just going to add to the distributor. I know that a lot of the big distributors, they all have project teams, which is basically working with suppliers to just massage through that process, basically, because it's not just hey, manufacturer, give us our data and then it all works like that. So there's a whole thing, especially I think now with the amount of sustainability data that is required to do business. I know that there's lots of because you can't just make a claim, it's then having to be verified. So there's a lot of extra layers in the process now, but I think it's worth just noting that it's about also building that relationship with the manufacturer and the distributor to do that.
Definitely.
Great. So here are, 4 things that we know and we see time and time again. So time to market, 30% would be a minimum. So it would be a minimum. If you did the bare minimum, this is what you would get. The team efficiency, if you take a look at what we said, 2 to 5 hours per SKU. So again, how many... I know a stat off the top of my head, it's a slightly different, but it was a building suppliers, that the work that we did for them for data and content services would have taken their team 2.5 years to do. So it's like, as a business, can you really wait 2.5 years to get all of your products on your website with accurate, correct, consistent product information?
And what's the opportunity cost, right, of not doing that? It's
absolutely, yeah. And what else could your team be doing to grow sales and grow your range rather than spending time sat there doing that, yeah.
Being
Cost
data.
savings. So I know this was a real stat from one of our customers that they were able to save £130,000 on content creation by being able to automate their data sheet creation, which is huge for a business. And then sales uplift. Again, I think this is, this is a minimum that you would expect to see. 20% growth on your sales. If you're able to, your conversion's going to go up if you have better product data. If you're able to range more products on your website, the chances are that you will have more customers coming to your website. The chances are that more people want to do business with you because you're doing a really good job. So yeah, I think that.
Yeah, and just building on what Claire said, I mean, these are real customers, right? Going back to the start of this session, we talked about the three different types of customer groups. Ultimately all of this stuff is about the outcome, right? The outcome is, as Claire said, it's time saving, it's cost saving. A lot of businesses don't realize the cost of the time they're taking. And we've worked with another distributor that calculated, right? They calculated the cost per SKU introduction, like in terms of they looked at the whole end-to-end operational process. It's a really good way of business casing this actually for any sort of product data initiative. Just go and like measure the time that it takes. And we said 12 to 15 interactions with suppliers. Well, someone in your business is managing those interactions and you're paying them a salary, right? So, it's tens of pounds per SKU. And if you multiply that by thousands of SKUs, all of a sudden you've got huge cost of running that operation. Pacific, we talk about lost SKUs. Well, this long tail of catalogue, right, that's just unloved, untouched. What is the opportunity cost of that, of missing out on those sales or that product discovery visibility? And ultimately, new product introduction lead time for distributors is really, really important. I guarantee you there's not one distributor in the world that isn't trying to grow their offer, right? They've got to be. And most of the time, those distributors will be limited by their capacity to onboard products, not by the willingness to want to do it, right? And so, that's a fact. We've seen that in multiple distributors we talk to. There's a huge opportunity here for small, not necessarily huge transformational enhancements. Most of these customers we work with, these are not like major upheavals. They are incremental transformations of data and content enrichment over kind of a reasonable period that have very demonstrable uplift, over time, Renaud. So with that, we thought we'd give a bit of a takeaway for this morning, right? It's like sitting there, it's like, well, what can we do? What can we do in our businesses? Well, maybe I'll do the first five, Claire, and you do the second five. So first of all, right, data completeness. Just run a little proof of concept or a test, right? Pick your top 100 SKUs and review them for missing images, specs, or documents, right? You will be amazed at how poor the data quality is in these products, right? And it won't just be missing attributes, it will be inconsistencies and it will be even wrong data in many times, right? So that's one thing you can do. And obviously you can then go and fill that data, right, with new content. Second thing is come up with a standard naming convention for your product titles, right? Like we see this so much in product pages that there's just a real mishmash of product title format. So just defining like concatenation rules for your product titles and descriptions could be a really good starting point. Third thing, you don't need a DAM or a PIM. You don't have to buy a DAM or a PIM to solve this problem, right? Set up a shared folder and at least try and consolidate some of your product assets, right? It's really easy to do, Google Drive or wherever. At least then you can build a central repository of these assets. 4, list your top 10 suppliers and maybe go to one reasonably mature supplier and do it properly with them. Say to them, look, we want to run an initiative. We're going to take the top 100 SKUs from you, and we're going to run a kind of product data cleaning and enrichment thing. And then we're going to measure it, right? We're going to measure it once we've got that new data on the site. And then 5, taxonomy. So this is, the kind of logical structure of the families on your website and the categorizations. What you could do is you could just take one super section or super category and you could break that down into a better taxonomy, and you could test that as well. Just keep it really simple. 5 things that you could do now, right, without a PIM.
The next 5 product data scorecard. So this is we often will do this if a customer kind of doesn't have an idea of whether their data is any good or not. We'll just choose 10 to 15 SKUs, and we'll go through and we'll give them a mark of how completed that actual SKU is. So it's a really good way. You should be, anything less than kind of 75%. You shouldn't really be ranging that on your website. Create a draft template for a product data sheet or a spec sheet. And, this can just be done in Word or Excel. What does your product need to be able to sell and showcase in a digital format? Any non-compliant SKUs. So, within this industry, there are a lot of different standards that these products have to meet. So you need to be going through and checking which SKUs are not meeting that compliance standards. There are ways of automating that, but you could just be going through and, again, picking categories that, whether it's hazardous categories or that a certain product needs to adhere to a certain standard, choose that and just do an audit of that. Using Excel filters or conditional formatting to highlight duplicate or missing values. This is like such an easy cleanup. Get a data export and just go through. It's insane how many you see. And it's such a quick and easy way to just get rid of duplications. I think duplications are probably one of the things that we see often. Missing values can take a bit longer to fix, but duplications you can fix like that as soon as you identify them. Meet with your sales or customer support team. These guys are absolute gold mine of information. What frustrates them about, or what are customers asking for that they can't find on your website, or go and speak to them and find out what frustrates them, what they can't find about the product, is also a really, really good thing.
Yeah.
Great. So that's 10 things.
Yeah, and just easy thing, you could pick maybe 2 or 3 of these things and just go and try them, basically. And the great thing about all of this is it can be done incrementally, right? It's not something, you don't need to go and ask for like tens of thousands of pounds of budget or anything. We got to say it as well, Claire. Like AI, ChatGPT, half of the things on this list you can use ChatGPT as assistant to do now, right? You'd be amazed at some of the the capabilities on that front, definitely.
Absolutely.
All right.
Wouldn't be a webinar without mentioning AI, right?
No, I had to get it in there.
Cool. Well, look, that's it for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. If product data is a bottleneck in your organization, we obviously have an array of services and solutions that can help you. You can always book a discovery call with Ben or myself, or you can do what a lot of businesses do, which they give us 100 SKUs and they test us to see how much we can enrich their product data, what images we can find, all of that. And there's lots of different ways that we can help. And a lot of the time that's because they don't have the capacity internally to do this. So maybe once you've tried a few of those tips that we mentioned before, or if you're interested just to get going, that you don't have the capacity to do it, we're here and we'd love to chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Claire.
Bye.
Good to chat. Cheers. Speak to you soon. Bye.